Well, hello everybody. It's suddenly I feel overdressed from the knees down. It's great to be in New York. I'm really happy to see all you again. For the last 7 summers, I have spent my time in the Dordogne Valley in southwest France. And one of the great pleasures of living part-time in that area is visiting the caves. Let's see, where are we? The Prehistoric Caves. This is a scene from Lascaux, from the Hall of the Bulls. Has anyone been to these caves and seen these in person? A few? Yeah. Makes you think, doesn't it? Makes you think. Whenever I need perspective, I go into a cave and I come out with an epiphany. And so what I want to do this morning is share some of those epiphanies with you. And one thing that struck me in seeing all these paintings is apart from the skill of doing these amazing drawings, is the handprints that appear here and there throughout in between the animals, as if to say, this hand did this drawing, right? So as small and insignificant and weak as we are, compared to these powerful animals that rule our world, we have a superpower. We can make tools and use them, right? So that's pretty interesting, I think. And these hands appear in caves all around the world, the same thing, from societies that could not have known each other. And what's interesting is if you walk up to one of these handprints and put your hand there, it will fit perfectly, right? So our biology has not evolved that much over time, but our technology has. In fact, it's been picking up speed for a long time, and suddenly a strange thing is happening. It's suddenly shooting off the charts. And so this is what we're seeing now since 1961, when the computer chip was invented, is this takeoff of technology to the information age. This is called Metachange. It's the change of change itself. The speed of change is speeding up. Okay, so this is what Douglas was talking about, Kurzweil and all that, heading towards the singularity. I'm not sure I believe in the singularity, but I think something big is happening here, that's for sure. For example, in 1961, if you were to build an iPod, it would have cost $3 billion each, and you would have needed a truck to haul it around. So much for the minimum viable product. Today, 50 years later, it's $100 and it could fit inside a watch. These people are not people. They're humanoids. They're robots invented in a Japanese lab. And they almost passed the Turing test, which means if you were in a room with them having a conversation, their eyes would lock on your eyes. You would see them blink. They would appear to be breathing. They would talk to you in complete intelligent sentences in a naturalistic voice. That's pretty spooky. And I think we're looking at a future that's very strange indeed. So what's up with this? Okay, another epiphany from the cave. I think we're in the middle of an honest-to-God paradigm shift, like we've been talking about forever, but we're right in the middle of it now, right? So we're moving from the industrial age to some new age, which I'm calling the robotic age, because I think the information age is too colorless a term for what we were about to see. And the problem is we're trying to use our old mindsets, old tools, old mental models to deal with problems that are much more complex and dynamic. And so what we get is something that looks like this. I mean, this is what happens in the middle of a paradigm shift. A lot of things break, right? So these are, are crises, but they're also opportunities. And I think the key is, as designers, is to go into this and fix them. You can be forgiven if you look at the situation and you say, things have gone terribly wrong. But actually, things are going terribly right. It's just our job to take the terrible out and replace it with wonderful. So, Metachange loves metaskills. That's the good news. Metaskills are higher order skills. They're master skills that let you learn other skills more easily. And we don't learn these in school. We haven't been taught these metaskills, but this is what we should be teaching. And the 5 metaskills that I think we need to keep innovating in the robotic age, in a time of increasing change, are these 5. So feeling is the metaskill of empathy and intuition. Seeing is seeing the big picture with all of its parts and how they fit together, or systems thinking. Dreaming is applied imagination. Making is what we all know about already: design thinking, prototyping, testing, all that. And learning is the opposable thumb of metaskills. It's learning how to learn, right? So using formal learning to increase your learning in the other 4 areas. So those are the 5. And when we have these metaskills, we're better equipped to deal with the robot curve, which is looks like this. It's a constant waterfall of obsolescence and opportunity, going from creative work at the top all the way down to robotic work. All right? So creative work is that kind of work we really love to do. It's unique, imaginative, non-routine, and autonomous. You do your own work. And this is where most of the money and the power is. And then when we understand creative work well enough, we move it down to skilled work. We turn it into skilled work. Standardized, talent-driven, professional, and directed. We can teach it in school. We can form organizations to uphold the standards, like the AIGA. And this is where most of us work all the time. Once in a while, we get flashes of creative work where we get to move up a notch. When skilled work becomes really well understood, we turn it into rote work. Interchangeable, routinized, outsourceable, and managed. And this is what you get paid minimum wage for. And as we know, minimum wage isn't enough to live on these days, so it's not a good place to be. So we actually need to get more people out of this level and move them up. And finally, if rote work becomes well enough understood and we can automate it, we turn it into robotic work, which is algorithmic, computerized, efficient, and purchased, right? So it's just constantly moving down the waterfall, and it lowers the cost and the value of work at every stage. So we find ourselves swimming furiously to keep staying at the top because of technology, it's moving faster and faster. So that's what we have to deal with. Alvin Toffler, Alvin, it's great, Alvin baby, in his book Power Shift, said the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. Nailed it. So I'm thinking about, I wrote a book to talk about this, so I can't really sum this up in 15 minutes, but I want to leave you with something you can start using tomorrow. And I think this model, another epiphany from another person, this is from Csikszentmihalyi, easy for me to say, who came up with this idea of flow. And if you don't know about flow, I'm sure you've experienced it in your own life. Flow is when you take on a challenge that's not so hard that it makes you anxious and you freeze, and not so easy that you become bored. Because in those two states, you don't learn very much. But in the middle of those, where you've got a challenge that's engaging enough to keep your attention, and you're working away and suddenly it's nighttime and you don't know where the time went, That's how you know you're in the joy zone. And when you're in that zone, you are learning about 10 times as fast as in the other two states. So that's what I wish for you, is that you could spend more hours in the joy zone. My poster child, or one of my poster children for the joy zone, is Eric Demain, and that's Eric on the left. Eric, he was the first, or the youngest professor to ever teach at Harvard, for one thing, but a lot of other things too. He was homeschooled by his father, and that's his father that's Eric on the right, his father on the left, sorry. Eric's father is a sculptor, and he's a natural metaskills teacher because he just encouraged Eric to do whatever interested him. As long as he was engaged and learning, his father would just say, go, keep going, it's great. That's it. He didn't try to teach him everything about everything, which is what we do in our sort of industrialized schooling system. He just said, follow your interests. And so Eric, being a young boy, started to do magic tricks, and he got really good at that. And so he's learning these hand skills. And then he decided he wanted to learn about glass blowing, so he sort of mastered glass blowing. Glass blowing led him to an interest in origami. And when he was learning how to do origami, he noticed all the folds were really interesting, and there's a certain geometry in those, and so he learned geometry. He just threw himself into that. Geometry led to higher math. Higher math led to programming, and then he used programming to feed back into origami. So that's kind of how he's learned what he's learned, is just by following his nose. This is one of Eric's origami pieces, and aside from being amazing, I mean, if you've ever done origami, how do you do this? How do you even conceive of something like this out of one sheet of paper to make it do that? But I think it's also a metaphor for Eric's career. I think it shows, or it sort of symbolizes how he just goes from one thing to another. It doesn't take a straight path. He meanders wherever he needs to. It turns back on itself, and it makes this unique shape called Eric. And, I think this is all attainable for all of us, really, if we follow his example. Anyone can be a genius like that. And Eric is, interestingly now, he's taking his origami skills and applying that to the problem of how proteins fold, because when they fold incorrectly, they create diseases like mad cow or Alzheimer's. So he's working on that. He's got a MacArthur Genius Grant to fund that. So, but if you asked Eric, how did he get so smart? How did he learn all these things? He would just tell you, look, I just did whatever I thought was fun. I just followed my interests. So we can all do that too. So your assignment, starting tomorrow, is pretty simple. It's to think about the world and all those wicked problems we see out there, all those, all those broken systems that we have, and then think about yourself and what you really love to do. What is it that puts you in the joy zone? That makes the time fly, because that's the key to all this, is figuring out what you want to do and what you're uniquely qualified to do, and what the world needs done, and where that overlap is where you're going to find the most success and joy. So that's really it. So I'll just leave you with one more thought pulled out of the cave, which is this. We're not human beings. We're human becomings. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. Thank you.
Have a seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
So robots is an inadvertent theme that's going to show up throughout the 2 days. You don't think we should worry about the robots? There's nothing to fear?
Well, you know, you hear a lot of talk about the race against machines as if they're going to take over, and we're just, you know, that's the singularity idea. We're going to be serving the machines. We're like midwives in evolution. We're just going to be helping the machines carry on faster than we can. I don't really see it quite that way. I think there are probably limits to the technology curve, but it's not really a race against machines. It's going to be a race with machines, and we need to know what we bring to the table and what we want machines to do so that we create a future that we actually want.
So no worries about Skynet?
Not too much, no.
Good.
A little bit about Facebook.
Well, I was going to say, you think Facebook is dangerous. Why?
I think they're not being responsible enough with our information, and I think they're symbolic of a lot of companies that get power. They're just doing what they do and making money, and we just kind of going along with it and giving them all our hard work and information and the fruits of our lives. And you know, what happens if they lose all our information? There's all that stuff we've invested just gone. They have no responsibility.
Well, and they don't really have an incentive
No.
for us to get it back either.
No, they do not. So,
Well, so if we don't have to fear the machine, if this is a race of humans being and machines, what falls on one side versus the other? Like, what should we be focusing on?
I think it's like Douglas said, we just do what we're already doing, which is trying to make the world more human. And I think machines play a part in that. I think that's what we have to make sure of, is that we're using machines in the best way we can for our future, for our children, and so forth. So I don't think it's that different from the way we normally think. I just think this technological change is out of control, and most people don't know what to do with it. And I think designers are the first ones that are going to say, hey, hold on a minute. We can get involved here, and we can make this better.
I agree. And it's not that machines can't be creative, but it's a different kind of creativity than human creativity, and especially the kind of creativity that we practice in this community. Should everyone be creative? Can everyone be creative?
Everybody is creative, but I don't think they necessarily develop it consciously. And I think even us in this room don't do it very consciously, and I think we should. And that's why I wrote the book. I think we should think about the metaskills because I think when you concentrate on them, you can develop them more quickly and deeply, and you can find out through doing that who you are and what your contribution should be.
Did anyone in this room, has anyone taken the metaskills test? No? Yeah, right here. You can yell out, like, what did you think of your handprint? Like, what did you think of the results? Just yell.
How did you net out? What are your strong metaskills?
It was hard for me to know how to take it into action. Even reading the book, it's really inspiring, but it's almost so heady I didn't know where to go.
So let me just repeat that for some people who may not have heard that or for the recording. You're saying it was hard to figure out what to do with that, with the results, how to take it into action. It was dense and heady. And like that next step is a challenge.
It is, and I can't tell you what to do with it. So this is something you're going to have to think about. But I'd like to know what how you came out. Were you strong in feeling, or making, or dreaming? Do you remember?
Making.
Just making?
Well, I remember making was the one that I read most about when I took the test and got the book, and I just really was focused on that.
Right. Well, a lot of us are involved in making, so that makes sense. You know, it's interesting because we're gathering all the information from this little quiz. It's just 10 questions to kind of see what patterns emerge. And one thing that we've noticed is that designers tend to be strong in 2 of the metaskills: feeling, empathy, and intuition, and making. Right? So shouldn't be surprising, but there you go. And so people say, well, what should I do about the skills where I'm weak in? And you don't have to have all the skills equally. That's not the challenge. The challenge is to just make sure that your weaknesses don't trip you up. So if you're really weak in, let's say, seeing, a systems thinking thing, a little bit of work in that area could make all the rest of your skills better. So it's just a matter of shoring up those weaknesses so that you let your strengths shine. So that's all it is, really. And so that's, I think, the answer to your question.
I'm reminded, one of the professors in our program, Elle Yevon, who teaches communication and collaboration skills, hates the word weaknesses. She reframes them as future strengths. And I think it's, and it's a little bit of wordplay, but it's also very aspirational that you aren't just making and feeling. We have the capacity to develop these other skills. And so my last question for you, are we teaching these meta skills well enough at any level or all levels?
We're not teaching them directly at all, and I think these should be the subjects in school, and everything else is just a way to get at these higher level skills. We should be more conscious about learning these skills. So we're not teaching them, and that's one of the big things that has to change about education is we don't need to learn brittle skills. We need to learn flexible skills, higher order skills that let us learn anything we need to learn when we need it. And I do think we have weaknesses. I disagree with that. And knowing what they are, I mean, this is how we get style. Style comes from your weaknesses. Like, how do you work around your weaknesses so that your strengths can really shine, and what ends up at the end is your personal style. So I'm not against weaknesses, but I think it's only bad if they are holding you back. And so it just means learning enough to free you up, that's all.
It sounds like also a good strategy is if you know your weaknesses, you can better pick your collaborators to balance them out.
Absolutely,
right?
Yep.
Pick people with the strengths that
you're missing. Yeah, it's really good in partnerships. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Like in my life, business was always a challenge, even though I had my own business my whole career. And it would have been great if I found someone who was really good at business but not so good at the design part. I never did, so I had to suffer through that. But I know a lot of people who have found those partners. And so it's great. It's great when that happens.
Yeah, it's not always easy because your values still need to be, and your vision still need to be compatible.
Values and vision
right?
need to be the same. Otherwise, you're never going to be compatible.
And do you talk in the book about how to deal with the differences of strength? Like, if I'm in a maker mindset most of my time or a feeling mindset and someone else isn't, that could cause friction. It could cause disagreement. Do you talk about how to play within those different strengths?
Well, I think the bigger question is how do you sell your ideas up throughout an organization, not just within your group, but to everybody? That's the question I always get. I have great ideas, but it's hard to get them through the system. And the answer is always the same, is to understand that the other person or the other people don't have the same background you have. They're not as quick maybe on the uptake. They don't have the years of experience of connecting the dots. And it's going to take them a little while to understand what you're saying. So I think you need patience, and you need to be able to tell stories about it. You need to show that if I do this, it's going to lead ... to that. And eventually, if you're correct, they'll see it and they'll come around. And it's the same with a partner. It's the same with a boss. It's the same with a team.
Any last words before we have to say goodbye?
No, I think I've said everything I need to say.
Right on. There you go. Success. Thank you, sir.